Mike Bohn joined today by former UFC champ Miesha Tate. Miesha, how are we doing?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for having me. I know we were gonna try to do this in person, but I guess whatever works. How's Vegas treating you so far?
It's been good. I mean, we had, as we'll get into, a pretty crazy fight night the other night. So,
Yeah,
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 it's been a good experience. Obviously, finishing off the year strong here. We got another good card on Saturday coming up.
agreed.
Yeah, for sure. So, I want to ask you off the top. I mean, I know it's been a little while since the fight with Ketlin and everything. It seems like you've handled that fight, the outcome of it, like really, really well. Why do you think you've been able to be so positive about the result there? I know how bad you wanted that win.
Yeah, it's not that I was happy about it or anything, but it doesn't define me. That's what I guess is the difference between the first time and this time is that now I have so much more that if I take a loss, it's not going to make or break who I am. And I see it as a small setback to an even bigger comeback, right? This for me was a bit of a sophomore slump. Right, I came back, my first fight, I felt really good. I did something that nobody's ever done and finishing Marion Renault. Then I came back and I really fell in love with my striking a little bit. And I also had a couple injuries that didn't allow me to wrestle very much in my training camp. And, we all have to work around our injuries, so it's not an excuse. But um, I feel like I didn't play into who I am when I step into the cage. I very much for 25 minutes primarily played a striking game. The couple shots that I did attempt were by no means a must take down scenario for me. It was kind of like, hey, if it's there, it's there. If it's not, no big deal. Let it go. I never really fought hard for the takedown.
Mhm.
And I think one takedown could have been the difference in the fight, which is the most frustrating part, is to realize how close I was to winning that. But the big takeaway is I have grown and developed in leaps and bounds in the areas that used to be my biggest weakness. There is no time in my career before this comeback where I would have been able to say I could be comfortable striking, with a woman who comes from Nova União, who has a 3-inch reach advantage on me, and that I could do that or be capable of that for 25 minutes. And I did it. But I didn't come out the winner, so there has to be some other big takeaways, and that's really it for me. Is I need to marry that back into my complete game.
Yeah, did you when you made the comeback? I mean, I'm sure in like the perfect world, you win all the fights, you get the belt back. There's no, struggles or setbacks or anything. But did the fact that this happened like even serve as like a bigger motivator to be like, hey, I still want to do this despite the fact that, the climb might be a little longer now or there's a setback here? Like, did that kind of reaffirm the decision to make this comeback and to keep pushing in your mind?
This was the perfect setback. It's the perfect time in my career to force me to reevaluate and remember the things that are very important. That when I fight, and seeing Julianna win the championship again, because we come from the like-minded and the grassroots, from the bottom to the top. It was our start near the same time in the sport, and to see her have that tenacity and that grit, and just remembering my roots, remembering where I come from, remembering what makes me a fighter. This fight was the perfect fight to have that happen. No, I didn't want to take any losses. I wanted that perfect run and straight to the title and everything, but that's just not the reality of life, right? We're going to hit those bumps in the road, and it's how we take them and how we adjust to it. And I really believe I'm going to adjust the best way possible. I would much rather have lost a very close fight to Ketlin, playing into some things that are not my strengths, than lose it in the title fight because I didn't learn along the way, right? And
Mhm.
I think it was a good time for me to have to have that realization, as opposed to later on in the career when I might have already built my way up to the title.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for sure. So we'll get into kind of what could be next for you in a moment, but we have to go back obviously to what happened at UFC 269. So I remember at your media day before you fought Ketlin, you were like pretty confident. You're like, hey, like I think Juliana has a really, really good chance against Amanda. but to actually like have confidence in your friend and your training partner is one thing. Obviously you're going to support her, but to see it actually play out in front of you, like what was that like?
That was, and it was so incredible because, you know, she lives in Chicago. I live in Vegas. We don't get to train together every single day, but she was my first pick on the Ultimate Fighter for a reason. And she was a major underdog in pretty much every fight, I feel like. And on the Ultimate Fighter to beat Shayna Baszler, you know, Ronda's #1 seed. I just think that Julianna has worked. No, it's not even think. I know Julianna's worked so hard. She's sacrificed so much. She has a beautiful daughter that she wants to give the world to, and she deserved that. So for me to see it actually unfold, you know, in order to beat Julie, you have to you have to find a technical way, because you cannot out-heart her. You cannot come with more will to win. You know, she is the embodiment of a fighter, and that's what she did on Saturday night, UFC 269. She came and she made it an absolute dogfight. And I loved seeing it, and I love her for that. It was very inspirational.
Yeah, and as you know, we're watching the fight play out. The first round, I don't think was probably the way she drew it up, but as that second round gets going, and she's landing, the single jab, the double jab, the triple jab, and you're like, oh, Amanda's swinging at air and things like that. I saw you, on the fighter section because I was on press row, and like I just saw everyone was kind of freaking out. You had like the drink in your hand. I didn't know how you didn't throw it up in the air and everything. But yeah, I mean, like when you're seeing that part, like were you like, holy crap, to just see how badly she was landing on Amanda, and to see Amanda eventually get taken down and then choked out? I mean, was that just were you thinking as you were seeing that second round unfold?
Well, I'll be honest. Well, the first round was a perfect round. It was exactly what was expected. You know, her head coach is also my strategist, so he does a lot of my strategy, Rick Little, and that's exactly what was game planned for, because everybody knows that Amanda has strong round ones, that she's tough. The point for Julie was to make it a fight everywhere, no matter where she was at. It's not that she expected to win one round or win the first round, but it was to make it a fight, make Amanda work wherever the fight was at. So even though Julie was on the bottom, it was a perfect round one. She didn't take big rights. She didn't take any damage. She did exactly what she needed to do to drag Amanda deep enough. And then in round two, she made me really nervous because she started to fight the fire with fire, which I knew she said she was going to do, but that was the only chance I really saw of Amanda beating her, was to just clip her with those really long, powerful rights. But then I saw Julie's jab and her motion in, out, this kind of rocking motion, and the really stiff high elbow jousting jab. Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that it wasn't technically perfect and coming in and out like this, because that's when you get the openings for the right to come. She was perfectly protected the whole time, and she just kept that out there. So even when Amanda would throw the rights, it wasn't really the clean place for it to land like there is everybody else who tries to be so perfectly correct in striking, tries to be these boxing phenoms. And I just think there is absolutely a place in this sport for it to be messy and ugly and chaotic, because it's very difficult to prepare for, than opposed to a cookie cutter fighter who's going to do everything by the book. Because everyone's reading that book. Everybody's reading the same book. Everybody knows that book. But when you think outside the book and you start writing your own story and you start making it your own style, I think Julie's made a career of that. And her jab was so perfect in that fight. It was so impressive. It was so wrong. It was perfect. You know what I mean? And I mean that with all the best compliments. It was nothing textbook, but it was exactly how she needed it to be, to take out Amanda. And that was the story. It was the jab that broke Amanda.
Yeah. So what did you make of the finish? Like, it seems like everyone has an opinion on that. I think Joe Rogan came out today and said, like, it's inexcusable for Amanda to be as tired as she was and to tap out that quick. I think Daniel Cormier said she should have let the choke go all the way in and, gone out to sleep and things like that. What did you kind of make of that? Like the way that final sequence ultimately unfolded?
Amanda realized that Julie was not going away. She was going to make it a fight wherever this fight was, and Amanda lost the will to win. I don't even think it was necessarily so much of a fatigue thing. Sure, she was probably feeling a little tired. I'm sure Amanda's been a lot more tired than she was, that little bit into round two. It
Mhm.
was the fact that Julie had no respect. Maybe that's the wrong word. But I mean, in the fight, yeah, she had no time for Amanda's. She did not care if Amanda was going to hit her back. She's like, I will make this a fight. I do not respect you any more than any woman on this planet. I'm in here. I'm your equal tonight. And I want to be, she's fighting to be the spirit. And Amanda realized that. And once that she realized that, the aura that is Amanda was not that to Julie. Julie didn't believe Amanda was larger than life. Julie didn't believe that Amanda was going to knock her out with the right hand. Julie didn't believe that Amanda was anything more special than what she brought. And when Amanda realized that too, Amanda broke mentally. I don't think it was as much fatigue as maybe some people are calculating. I think it was all right here, and I think that was the will that Julianna propelled herself into this fight with, and through the fight. And no, Julie had a bigger dog in her, much bigger than Amanda did. Amanda might be more technically sound. She might be the better athlete. She might be more powerful. There might be a lot of things that you could say, perhaps, that Amanda has over Julie, but it's not heart, and it's not will, and it's not desire, and it's not discipline, because Juliana is truthfully one of the hardest working women, and she believes in herself, and that's more important than anything, I think. So it was great. It was really awesome to see her do that.
Yeah, it was interesting. And to your point there, I think in those exchanges, like Amanda was obviously standing in the pocket and, throwing those hooks and stuff. And as we've seen so many times, people usually fall to that. So I think maybe she expected her power would make the difference. And she's like, if this girl wants to stand there with me and do this, like I'm going to hit her and she's going to fall down like everyone else. And
And
when
when
that
she
wasn't the
did,
case,
when
it's
she
a
was
game changer, right?
yeah, when she was getting the worst of the exchanges, you saw her eyes get huge, and everything else started to fall apart. It was like the foundation wasn't actually there. It was like this I don't know. You just saw like a building falling, and she
Mhm.
did. She got taken down, and the choke. I don't think it was a real choke either. It might have been something like a jaw lock. Definitely
Mhm.
might have been painful and very uncomfortable, and it might have sucked. Might have been a little disruption to the breathing if Amanda was breathing through her mouth, but I didn't see that as a full on. It definitely wasn't a blood choke, and the fact that there was no hooks in positionally, she definitely should have been able to escape that if she even had the will to want to turn one direction or the other. She should have been able to make that a much more difficult finish for Julie, but she was already so broken by that point that she already knew that the fight was lost.
Yeah. So what do you think? There's obviously this conversation of biggest upsets in UFC history. And, it's almost like when this conversation comes up, it's like a slight to Juliana or something, which I don't think it is. I think it's more of a credit to what, Amanda Nunes was going into that fight. And I think a lot of people say, like, is it this fight or is it GSP and Matt Serra? And to me, it's this fight just because when GSP lost to Matt Serra, it was all about what he could be. Like he had just won the belt. He hadn't had all those title defenses, but there was a lot of hype around him. We all thought he was going to be this great fighter. Then he lost. Amanda has already done it all. She's won the 2 belts, got all the title defenses. So to me, to take her down at that point, that is a bigger moment. And again, no slight to Juliana. It's more just about what Amanda has done. So do you think that belongs at the top of that conversation?
It definitely belongs in the top. I would rank it just below the Holly Holm and Ronda Rousey fight. Honestly, I think that's a fight needs to be a part of the conversation
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, maybe this is my own bias, but I knew that Juliana had a clear path to victory. I didn't think that Holly did. I'll be honest. I just didn't think
Yeah.
that she had the style to beat Ronda. I thought when Ronda would get her down, she really is not, very. I especially, me, I've broken her down, and then obviously I ended up fighting her, but I just didn't see her having the ground skill set to be able to survive. And I always typically favor grapplers. I mean, if it's even a close fight, it's kind of like, well, if somebody can get that takedown, I'm gonna typically, even the rounds, it's easier to judge when somebody gets a takedown. Usually that favors them in the round as the rounds go by. I
Mm-hmm.
really thought Holly that Ronda was gonna walk through Holly, and that shocked me. that was crazy. So I think for me, it would rank right under that fight. But I believed him a lot more in Julie than I think most people did.
Yeah, definitely splitting hairs, and it's, opinions,
Yeah.
the individual person, right? But yeah, I agree. Those all belong in the conversation. It was definitely a wild scene. So I guess the question is now, like, how does this affect you going forward? I know you want that belt and everything. So like, how does it impact your plan? And I know they're going to do a rematch most likely. Who knows how long we're going to have to wait for that? But how does this affect your next move, do you think?
Well, this definitely changes the entire landscape of the bantamweight division. I believe what will be next is Amanda versus Julie. It's all signs point to that will be the next fight. And I think that Julie wins that fight again, especially now that Amanda's been broken by her once. I believe that Julianna can definitely do that again, probably with more ease the second time. And I have to get in the win column again. So I need a fight in March, probably is what I'm looking at, or April. So we'll see how that unfolds. And I don't want to fight Julie because uh, I've rooted for so long for her to get there, and I've been small parts of just helping her build some of that, and I don't want to take any credit because this is all Julie. It has nothing to do with me. I mean, coaching on the Ultimate Fighter, that's a joke. It's not like I really, I mean, we're together for 6 or 8 weeks. I cannot even take credit for that. I mean, she goes out there and she wins these fights because she has the heart and tenacity and will to want to do that. But I've always been like part of that support for her to want to get there, even if it's just at a distance. And now it would be really tough for me to want to take that, to be the person to take. I don't want to be that person. But at the end of the day, I realize that this is something, as her being the champion, that we've got to at least just think about it at the moment. But a lot can change between now and then. I still have to win and do my job. So I think what I really got to do is focus on that. And if Julie's still the champion by the time that I get there, then that's a conversation I think we should have at that time. But until then, just got to keep my nose to the grindstone. I've got to get probably 2 wins before I'm looking at a championship fight anyways, at least. And that's it. So I'm going to focus on me, and I'm going to continue to cheer for Julie and pray that we don't ever have to fight each other.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. There's no point. And I know you'll probably get asked about it, every time you do an interview from now on and everything, but that's the right answer. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, more or less.
Exactly. So many things can change. And I know that Julianna could make 125. I know that I could make 125. I know that there's also those things too, so it's not out of the question for either of us to go hunting Valentina at some point. So there's lots of different dynamics. I know she really wants that fight too. So we would have to see what happens if everything continues to play out that in that direction. There's always, the possibility of going to 25 for either of us too.
Yeah, what would it take for you to pull the trigger on that? Because just you hearing you say that, and from the outside, like if you're gonna start trying to make a title run, feel like you could go to 125 and you could get there with like 1 win or something, because Valentina is so desperately in need. So would there be any consideration of just doing that now?
It's something I've definitely thought about, but I don't want to. I definitely don't want people to think that I'm running at 135. I hate the idea of leaving a division on a loss. It really bugs me. I don't want people to think that I don't know. Something really bothers me about that, about leaving the division on a loss. So it's something I've thought about, but at the same time, I feel like I need more time to really digest all of that. It's not out of the question by any means, but it would be a long process if I'm going to get down to 125, because you probably know I've been pretty vocal. I'm not a big fan of big weight cuts, so I would definitely have to do some things to change my body and get down at that weight. But it's not something that's way out, in left field. It's definitely something I feel like it could be an option. What would it take for me to pull the trigger? I suppose that was the question. I would just have to decide to. That's all. I don't really have another answer, except that definitely leaning towards staying at 135, especially with the change ups and everything like that, and seeing what happens there. But 125 is not, I don't think it's out of the question for either of us. We're not very, Julie and I are about the same size, so not very big for a 135-pound division. but it's by design. You know, neither one of us believes that weight cutting is a massive advantage. But I do realize that reach is an advantage. So that's something that I've generally never been at, 135. I've usually never had a reach advantage. I think at 125 I would.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think like this result, it's good for the division and for the sport, right? Like obviously since Amanda beat you, she's held the title, she's won her second belt. A lot of these fights in the minds of the public have been like foregone conclusions that she's going to win. It's just a formality. So like to see the shakeup and that rematch, I think is going to be one of the bigger fights in women's MMA history. Everyone's kind of interested now. As you said, it changes the landscape. Like this is only a positive for the division as a whole. And I'm sure for Amanda, it's going to be a big payday for her going into the rematch, and it creates something interesting that we haven't really had there for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think so. I think, this changes the bantamweight division for sure. This is exciting. It kind of turns the whole division upside down on its head. There's a lot of people that Julie hasn't fought either before. So it gets really exciting. And both 125 and 135 definitely could have used some shaking up, some mixing up. With me coming back now Julianna's the champion, and you never know how either one of us might stir up the 125-pound division at some point too.
Yeah, definitely. So if you are saying at 35, though, I know Aspen Ladd's out there saying that she's already accepted a fight with you, and that's basically on you. Is this true? Like, have you actually been offered that fight yet?
I think that is hilarious. I think that Aspen Ladd needs to do more work on her part to even sniff coming back down to 135. I think that the UFC should probably ban her to 145 personally, or, because you can't fail and miss weight that many times and then try to cheat the scale. People ask me, well, how'd she try to cheat the scale? It's not very hard if you will refuse to put both your hands up to just pinch the curtain like that. You know how much a pound is? Like, your cell phone's not very, you know what I mean? You don't have to need very much. And I don't know if you were there. Were you there at that in the media?
No, but I was watching it on the stream, and like, because we have a very high quality stream, and I was like, right away, I was like, that's suspect.
So she weighed in with all her clothes on at 141. Then she took her clothes, and I'm like, there's no way her clothes weigh 5 pounds. She takes them off, and all of a sudden, with the curtain around her and not her hands up, she weighs in at 131 point something. And they're like, wait, how is there clothes don't weigh 10 pounds? Mine, it's you. She refused to check her weight on the scale previously, which is what you need to do so you have an idea where you're going to be. So there was some mischievous stuff going on. The 10-pound jump, she was pinching the curtain, and then she started shaking like she was going to do it, like, win an award for her acting when both of her hands had to come up. Then she did it with one hand, like barely above, guaranteed hanging on the curtain rods over there, and ended up guessing wrongly because she could not see the scale, and she weighed in at 137. My guess is she was probably 139. That's about how much those clothes weigh. I know so my point, in case without even, I know I've already readdressed that situation. She needs to at least go to the PI and have her body assessed and them decide if she can even make 135. Because last I talked to the matchmaker, that's a bridge she needs to cross before she starts planning fights at 135. She needs to have a dedicated route and professionals behind her saying that she can make that weight. Until I hear that coming from her, I'm not wasting my time on Aspen Ladd, because I will be furious if I show up for my job and I've always made weight and she comes in and misses weight or tries to cheat the scale and the fight is off because of that. I would be out of my mind. So she needs to be the adult and actually get on a progressive plan to make 135, because I'm not going to be the dummy to waste my time on a fight with Aspen Ladd when she can't even make the weight. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to risk having a fight canceled. So if she can make 135 on her next fight and I have a fight in one, then we could probably talk about it, but she didn't look good her last fight, even at 145. So what is my real interest in that fight? I mean, I don't really have an interest in that, to be honest, right now. We'll see if she can even make the weight, start there, get a win, look better. Then we could talk.
No, that seems very fair. And all the personal stuff aside, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, you're obviously in this comeback and you, I'm sure, have a finite amount of time in your mind. You're not going to waste a full camp to not be able to do the actual fight. That seems terribly unfair to you.
Exactly. And I think it was, I don't know if it was the commission that pulled the fight the last time, but they have the option to do that. If she missed weight by a large amount, which I believe that she did, I believe she missed it by about 4 pounds. Um, Sometimes it's not even in your choice to take a fight with somebody who's missed weight. Sometimes the commission just says nope, you know. So I that would be so unfair. I don't want to deal with that. I want her to show her professionalism, make the weight, get on a plan, and do the things she needs to do before I'm going to invest my time as a mother of two. This is very important to me to have professionals show up and do the job that they say they're going to do. So it could be a fight in the future. I doubt it will be my next one.
No, that's totally fair. So is there anyone out there that you look around the division that like that person makes sense? I mean, I really want to see this Holly Holm rematch. I think this has been the one since you got back, but is there something that is more logical to you, or do you think that's the one?
So I did talk to the matchmaker, but so I'm not going to say specific names, but I will say that Holly doesn't seem like the person because she's injured. She's still out with some kind of injury, and I don't know what that is, but it seems like right now that she's not an option.
Okay, cool. That makes sense then. And you said March. I know they just announced, I think it's like UFC 272. It's March 5th here in Las Vegas. Would that be, the perfect one? A home game in front of a crowd and everything?
Yeah.
That seems like it'd be a
I'll
lot of
tell you
fun.
what, after going to 269, I was pretty stoked on it. I thought before I was telling myself, oh, the crowd, it's okay. It doesn't really matter either way. But I definitely absorbed a different kind of energy. I think that all the fighters did too. It was contagious, and I felt like I caught the bug. So that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, sweet. Well, appreciate the time, Miesha. I think we covered it all. And yeah, I wish we could have got to do this in person, but we'll keep it on the checklist for next time.
Next time.
All right. Thanks so much for the time. Have a great day.
All right. Take care.